Yeah, we're recording here. We're part 3, Mr. Rob Waterhouse, a long-time booking now. You're getting older, Rob. Welcome to the show. Nice to have you here in these COVID times.
Thanks for coming, Rob.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, what are you going to ask him? You're going to ask him the hard-hitting questions?
No, you're going to start.
Oh, am I?
You're starting.
Rob, why are you here?
Well, I'm trying to find some customers for my new bedding venture,
Right.
robwaterhouse.com, and trying to give punters what they need.
Right. Well,
What do punters need, Rob?
Better odds,
Better odds? Okay.
yeah, good service,
Yep.
and betting on everything.
Yeah. So what are the current purveyors not doing?
Well, they only want losing customers for a
Yes.
start. We're much more liberal than they are, and all your customers, we want to give them 5 bet boosts every day.
Right. Okay. That sounds good. And how do people get hold of you?
It's quite easy. It's not hard to remember. robwaterhouse.com, and I'm a person rather than one of these overseas corporates, Glenn.
You are a person, Rob. You're a colourful person. Colourful raising identity, this.
And so, Rob, obviously you've got a bet to lose 5,000 when you're fielding at the track. Will that be the same for your online customers?
I think we've got a 2,000 at the moment. It depends. We're happy to.
Yeah.
And you're talking about 2,000 from 9 a.m.
Yeah.
All right. So what lessons have you learned from Tom's online business?
Well, that's a good question. Tom established a very big business very quickly. I suppose the trouble is he spent a lot on advertising and it actually drove people crazy. And I think was a bit of a mistake as it turned out.
What, it drove customers crazy or just people in general?
I think it drove people in general crazy. I think Tom still...
And that affected the brand?
Probably improved the brand, but it sort of was difficult. And I actually think that the taxes on bookmakers have come about because of all the bookmakers advertising so much.
Yeah.
Right, so it's like cop this bookies, we're letting fly at you.
Yeah. Well, it's really a tax on punters, isn't it? That's the tragedy of it.
And in the UK, the punters actually pay the tax in the high street, don't they?
No, they used to, Mark, they don't anymore.
All right.
And Rob, your prices for Saturday will be up on Wednesday?
We haven't done that yet, but we intend doing that, Gordo.
Okay, beautiful. And will there be any...
trying to organise his bowlers around.
Yeah, of course. We're looking forward to them.
Right, so you have a bowler department?
And your pricing, so obviously you've got your own team that does the form analysis. Is
very,
it going to be
very aggressive.
And it's going to be opinion stuff with your stuff as well, unlike the other corps who pretty much just scrape off each other. There'll be a point of difference there.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck with it. And anything else in racing?
I tell you what, Glenn's just the nicest person in the world, isn't he? Are you trying to get some free bets or some bet boosts?
You've got to remember that I'm Glenn Pollitt trained.
Yeah.
He taught me lots.
This is what he always says to people.
Right, so we need some commentary on the current phase of bookmaking, given that we've lost bookies from the track. We're worried that we won't get bookies back on the track in the way that we did.
I'm worried that I think you get the bookmakers back in the first instance, but I'm worried you won't get the punters back there.
Which punters are you talking about? They seem to be gone anyway.
Well, there might be less. We lost lots of punters with the equine influenza, and I think it'll be worse this time, unfortunately.
So what about the idea of the bookies on the on-track bookies portal, which I know that D. Dwyer's been talking about for a long time, this idea that the non-corporate bookmakers pool their liquidity together. But surely that seems the way of the future for the bookies you're talking about?
Yeah, it's got plenty of merit, that idea. I think it's a good idea. I suppose I do actually like the on-course very much, and I feel very sad it's disappearing, having been on-course.
But it has disappeared, hasn't it? You're out there looking for woolly mammoths, aren't you?
I suppose I am. I was hoping to have worked at Royal Ascot this year, which is still quite strong, and I think it still exists.
They're like novelty meetings in the sense that they recapture something of times past, but the rest of the game's gone, isn't it?
No, I don't think it's as bad as that. I think you actually could work every day in England as a bookmaker and have a better business than you'd have here trying to work every day.
Right, so your licence here might be for sale when you move over there.
Well, my family's here, but it is actually...
Yeah, but you say your family's here, but they're all grown up now. Wouldn't you think of going over there?
Grandchildren, Glenn. You wouldn't move away from your grandchildren.
In a second?
Oh, dear.
He was sending me photos of his 1-year-old
I know,
granddaughter.
but you can always... Rob knows how to jump in planes 3 times a year in first class and sit there and fall asleep and come home.
It's not a private jet. You only fly first
Would
class.
you think of moving to England to work full time?
Well, I'd like to very much, but
Another 40 years on the planet, why not?
yeah, well, it is a bit more alive than it is here on course.
What's the turnover tax over there compared to here? On course.
It's a 15% winning bets tax,
Okay.
which is
Yep.
the winning bets tax is much more absorbable than what it is here.
Yeah, definitely.
What does that mean, 15% winning? So
Well,
if
so
you
it's
win
like
on the
bets
day
it,
or
isn't
win on the quarter or win on the year?
On the year.
Okay. So you can work all year with no turnover tax, and if you finish square, you don't pay any turnover tax. Wow. That sounds...
Like
And-
normal
and
business.
you've got to pay also a stand fee, which I think is 6 times the entry charge. So
Well,
to go
this
to
is
Royal
nothing.
Ascot, it might be £40 to go to Royal Ascot, it's £240. But if it's £2 to go to the Dogs, it's £12.
All right, but they don't have a lobby called the TAB over there, do they?
No, exactly.
So I mean, the fact is that
Which is actually an anti-punter lobby.
Yes. Yes, I understand that. I mean, the way it's grown up, and I read a very interesting book recently about an SP, but it is interesting when you look at all the angles that the TAB have operated from, in terms of how they control what happens at the track and what happens in relation to betting.
The odd thing is with the TAB is that people sort of think that it's virtuous and government owned and whatever, is really it's a rapacious company that's foreign owned.
All right, is there anything we can do about it?
No.
I don't think there is. I think they've
entrenched.
lobbied too well.
Right, but there must be a means of clipping their wings somehow, of calling them to account somehow. Why was it the racing industry didn't blush when the TAB were fined how many million for failing in their anti-money laundering obligations?
Well, I heard you talking before on part 2 of the show, 2-hour bets going on after the race jumps. And you might remember I wrote an article in the Herald complaining of that, and you were involved with the stewards' inquiry with me, and they were very aggressive and hateful, weren't they? And they put out a stewards' report that didn't reflect what the evidence was in any way, shape or form, and rejected what you and I both said totally. But the fact remains is that even in ordinary TABs, bets can be cancelled 15 seconds or 20 seconds after the race jumps. And of course, probably 25% of the business actually comes from the Isle of Man, and you don't know what the rules are there. And thirdly, as we showed in the set of that stewards' inquiry, the races are now closed by a woman sitting in an office in Melbourne watching Sky Channel. Well, there can be a 6-second delay on Sky Channel, and if she's scratching her nose, it might be 8 seconds before it's...
Right, so actually the betting is closed, not just Betfair going in play. The betting is closed that late into the race.
No, I'm talking about the TAB.
Yeah, TAB.
The woman's watching Sky Channel and turns off. When you had that in Stewards' inquiry, you had 3 bets after the race. You saw the race jump.
It does seem a big job for one woman. Like, imagine if they employed Glenn Pollock to do that job.
Well, it used to be in the old days where they weren't. You didn't have all the technical advantages. As soon as the starter pushed his button, the tote closed down, which is what it should be. And I heard you say before, in Hong Kong, of course, no bets as soon as the red light goes on, 4 minutes before, 4 seconds before the race jumps.
Right.
Yeah. You know,
Okay, so this should be something that we could actually angle. If that's well known, that their methodology for closing off betting is clearly delayed, then that should be something that we can.
well, the
at least do
stewards
something
were
about.
very protective that day at the inquiry.
They
weren't
were, but I wonder if they. I'm sure that that it wasn't as bad as it is now in the sense of the delay. That there's occasion.
Well, it's also in this day and age outrageous that Sky Channel can be 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds behind the reality. Doesn't have to. You can find a TV somewhere, of course, sometimes that actually is real time, can't you? Why
Yes.
can't they all be real time?
Well, it's got, but they say they hide behind the high definition. We're broadcasting in high definition, which means that the signal has to be repackaged and takes longer to deliver.
Yes, I'm sure there is, but I, for one, would rather watch it in low quality definition
racing-
in real time.
But surely the PVL and the racing industry want their pictures broadcast beautifully.
Yes, well, the
And that's
replay
very
should be
important to
the
them.
replay should be beautiful.
Right. Okay.
But you know, you could pay the surcharge to get the 2-second delay rather than the 7-second delay. That's gone now, but that was a while ago, and a
But
lot
why,
of the in-play
but
guys
why
were.
shouldn't you get the 0-second delay?
Oh,
It does-
of course.
the speed
With
of
the
light's-
technology these days, of course we should
the speed
have
of
that,
light's
yeah.
176,000 miles per second. Where's the problem?
You didn't learn that from Glenn Pollock, did you, that bit?
No,
I'm sure he told me that.
no.
So, Rob, really why we've got you on is to talk about form.
Oh.
Because, you know, you
I'm-
pride yourself on being a form man.
I'm still learning, Mark.
You know, you know, people arrived on the racetrack, you know, in the late 70s and the 80s, observed you up on the stand, but you've, you know, definitely promoted yourself as a form man throughout your racing time. Would that be true?
I don't ever promote myself as being a form person, but I suppose I've always been a person very cognizant of the form, but in all its forms. And I suppose, got to be honest, I actually think the form is done less well today than it used to be done in the good old days. I think.
Why is that?
Well, I just don't think there's the same number of people. I remember saying to a journalist once that I thought there were 400 people at the races on a Saturday that wouldn't lose at the races. And all those people have been lost now. I think there were some really good minds concentrating on the form.
Don't you think maybe they've just moved off course?
No.
Because I mean, I have
God,
lunch.
you would know.
So
Like tens of
through
people like
Racing
that.
RANT and the chat room we have, I've bumped into some guys who are real winners.
Yeah,
and
they're
I've never heard of them.
Keen form
Yeah.
judges as
Yeah.
well.
Well,
They are the descendants of the people you talk
yeah,
about.
possibly.
They're in the modern form.
Well, the market I'm in on course, we don't see those people. I'm
No,
not aware of them.
no.
And I reckon the market's much less razor sharp than it once was.
But
Well,
isn't
that's
it-
a fantastic. I mean, if that's true, that's brilliant because it means there's lots of edges to still make money.
Sure are. Yeah.
So, why has it lost its sharpness, its acuity, the market?
I suppose we used to have on a. I used to enjoy the trots at Harold Park, and on the coldest, wettest night of the year, you'd get more people at the trots at Harold Park than you'd get going to the Golden Slipper. They were just wonderful meetings. The bookies bet to low percentages, and some really clever people did the form very well on.
Well, they had opportunity, didn't
Yeah,
they?
of
So
course.
there's no great opportunity going to the course now, nor
No,
will
exactly.
you meet
Exactly.
anybody that you want
Exactly.
to discuss the form with.
Exactly.
So, I mean, Gord's reached out to a number of keen beans in their 20s who are keen and acute players at the moment, and I'm surprised at their existence.
It's very surprising. Some of them are pretty big players. I'm not talking small punters here. They're you've never heard of them, and they're turning over.
But no
money.
doubt they are, and I'm sure they're very smart. But it's funny when they're betting with the corporates, they're either restricted, only allowed to win a certain amount. The bookmakers go to the race, and we're obliged to bet everyone to win $5,000, and there 12 of us on the rails and more in the outer ring.
That's
We
unfair.
bet to losing figures every race, but they don't bother coming to see us.
Yeah.
And look, you might say they're there betting with the corporates, but
Yes,
Well,
you're saying
I-
why wouldn't they go to the course? Well, of course, sorry, pardon the pun. They have grown up not coming to the course. So, firstly, they don't have that on their
Yeah.
radar.
yeah.
And in terms of actually operating, it is quite hard to operate at the course. If you have a remote, you're a technologically savvy person.
A lot of these people, they're in their offices. They've got 12 screens up. They're betting everywhere
it's their
in
happy
Australia,
place.
overseas.
I've seen these blokes
It's
turn up at
very
the
hard
track.
to do.
I've seen these blokes turn up at the track, and I find them quite ducks without a pond. They're just not comfortable.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they-
Well, you know how uncomfortable I was when
Yeah,
I
you
was
look
going out
you
there.
look uncomfortable out
Yeah.
there. It's only taken Daly just the last couple of months he was there to look like he was warming
Yeah,
up.
but he grew up at the track. I mean, he was in the betting ring with us on the other side. He was sitting up to
Paul
Lionel
Daly?
Abrahams. Yeah,
I don't remember
best
that.
mates with Lionel Abrahams. He was like his little acolyte.
Didn't know that.
But yeah, so he's already got experience of a long history of that particular milieu. But I'd suggest that these players would be very keen to bet into a portal offered by the on-course bookmakers,
Okay.
or even have individual
Well,
accounts. with
why
them.
wouldn't they? Because we let them on to win more and more aggressive pricing
Yes,
wise.
but they want to bet with the click of a mouse, and so in terms of accessing that, those sharp minds, and maybe you don't want to bet them.
Well, I all I can say is I wish they were on course betting with us on course, and obviously I'd like to bet with me.
Yes,
Of course.
I'd
Well, a
suggest
few of them are betting with Dave Dwyer now, so I'd suggest they'll be betting with Rob
Yeah,
soon.
yeah,
they'll be keenly looking at your prices, Rob.
no doubt.
Yeah, you'll sort them
Tell you
out.
what, if they don't get good boosts off you, Robbie.
Yeah,
they'll be very
5 a day.
We're not going to let him go without a few pearls of wisdom because, of
Pearls
course,
of wisdom.
You've got to give us one pearl. I'll give you one.
Yeah.
Be wary of leaders. That's Rob's first play.
Very wary of leaders.
Very wary.
All right,
of
so
leaders.
tell us about the leaders, Rob, and why, and your experience in the game of mixing with participants that have a different view. So you're a betting man, you're a form man, and so you're saying, I think this is the best way to win a race, whereas you obviously have a lot of conversations with trainers and jockeys and owners and other participants, and they perhaps have a different view. Well, they're not betting for a living.
I think virtually every punter would like to see his horse in front of the turn, wouldn't he? If it was only a back mark, he wouldn't be uncomfortable with the fact.
And they want to see their horses ridden aggressively, don't they?
Yes, of course. That's the one. We all know if you were able to have $10 in every horse that led into the straight, you'd finish a long way in front, as a basic rule. So we all understand that perfectly. I must say that connections of horses hate it. Absolutely hate it.
And is that because their experience as an owner has taught them that, or their experience as an apprentice trainer or a jockey?
My theory is that this is a bit the opposite of what I was saying a moment ago, is that 3/4 of leaders fail, and 90% of backmarkers finish on, run good races.
Next time.
No, they finish and run really good races. They're very pleased with themselves, whereas 3/4 of leaders fail.
25% win.
That's the point.
It's emotional.
Yeah, well, I think it perhaps goes back to, being hunted and hunting. You actually don't like being hunted by something, do you?
Yeah. Well,
But,
you notice,
primeval.
like the average guy who's watching a race, when a horse's back comes from last to win,
Oh,
he gets more excited than one that
He must
leads
get
and
paid
hangs
2 or
on
3
it.
times
Yeah,
more,
because
does he?
one's a theory of you beauty, I got there, and the other one is, oh
I
my
just-
God, I
yeah,
held on.
Just lasted. Just lasted.
Yeah.
But it is a very odd phenomenon that connections by good wife trained horses and her owners as a group hate her horses to lead, and especially the more important the owner is, the more they hate the horse leading.
Geez, well, how do they stick with the good misses to play?
Well, it's been successful for her.
My word, it has.
Yeah, it's been successful for her.
Yes, but basically you're pointing to an underlying tension there between form and perception.
Yes.
And I mean, you've also deployed that to your advantage, haven't you? Because of course, if that perception is out there, then punters aren't necessarily, whilst they may want their horses ridden aggressively and lead, they don't necessarily think that way. And so the marketplace is underselling leaders, is it?
Well, I think the marketplace still undersells leaders a bit, not very much, but a little bit.
Yeah, so would you say that there was a particularly fertile time there in your career where you've managed to capitalise on that?
I reckon that leaders were much more underestimated 40 years ago than they are now, but still people were very conscious of them. Form people were very conscious of them.
Were you as much a leader's man 40 years ago as what you are now?
Always been but you keep saying I'm a leaders person. Race with fast pace, I love laying the leaders.
Yeah, I understand all that, Rob. Yeah, I get the mechanics of the way the race is set up, but I've watched your board for a long time.
Most races are inefficiently run.
Okay.
And they go a bit slowly.
Yeah, because of politeness, correctness.
Well, whatever the reason is.
Yeah, no, it's
but if there's a lot of speed in the race, I'm not married to the leaders by any manner of means.
No, I know how you play.
Australian racing, there's not a lot of pace on in Australian racing,
No.
particularly when compared to Hong Kong.
No, and so Rob, you've been you switched some attention to Hong Kong during this time,
Yes.
where you were off course at least. And,
Yes. Well, there's no doubt if you look at the sectional times in England, I think the first sections run about 8 or 9% slower than the last half of the race. If you look at American racing, it's actually the first sections run about 5% faster than the last sectional, and Hong Kong is about 2 or 3%, and Australia is just on average.
right. And so, how does that help you doing the form? So, you've cut your teeth on Australian racing, and you want to bet on Hong Kong because that's a place to bet. You can get set. I mean,
well, Hong Kong
very
has a few advantages. One of the advantages is that the tracks are beautifully prepared. In Australia, the trackmen have been told to prepare tracks as though they're dead or soft tracks, and the grass just can't put its roots down, and the tracks give way easily, and it's a real problem. Whereas Hong Kong, it's good, track good all the time.
Well, they don't have a breeding industry to suck up to, do they?
Well, I keep telling people that they breed tough horses there, but the interesting thing is, in Australia, the median horse I think has 11 and a half starts. In Hong Kong, I haven't taken the figures out, but it must be over 20. So they must like the firmer tracks, mustn't they? Which, and I know both anecdotally from Percy Sykes and other people saying that it's the soft tracks that break horses down. But I know that if you look at the last start a horse has in its career, it's statistically much more likely to be on a soft track than it was on a firm track.
Wow.
Well, it's you know, yourself.
Well, it's the complete opposite of the view, though.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what we say. Well, Glenn, you and I both do the same thing. We look to find things that are opposite. You know yourself, if you and I go running and we run on a soft surface, we're liable to do some injury to ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah, beach running's a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Comparing you two to a prime athlete thoroughbred.
We go all right. Don't worry about us. Yeah, interesting stuff.
All right, but more in terms of Glenn's desperate to get away, but I'm going to keep him here and nail him to the mast.
Yes.
So, but in relation to Hong Kong racing, you've made some observations about the differences between the jurisdictions. But in terms of betting on Hong Kong, what do we need to do differently, or what did you need to do differently from?
Look, I spent a lot of time betting on greyhounds, a lot of time betting on trotting races, a lot of time betting, Australian racing. I think it's the same sort of rules, just actually finding what each race is and what the balance is. And
right, so it's building up an IQ of profiles. Of this profile fits this situation, this profile fits that situation. Would that be?
Well, I think the market actually is a bit more naive in Hong Kong than it is in Australia. I think one of the troubles in Australia is there's no sort of strength. I seem to put a set of prices on my board, which is the morning line prices, and then I work for the next 40 minutes until the price of the board reflect my market. There's no one to say that's wrong. That's the issue. The issue betting in Australia.
Yeah.
In Hong Kong, I reckon they're much more jockey conscious and trainer conscious.
Right, but you're describing Australia 40 or 50 years ago.
I think I am. I think it's more so than Australia 40 or 50 years ago.
And yet it's not necessarily an easy place to do the form, is it? I mean, there'll be specialists that say,
I might complain it's too easy because there only have 980 runners or something like that.
Right.
It's
okay,
fault.
but each race is a puzzle, and I'm saying, well, I know how to attack a puzzle at Warwick Farm on Wednesday. I know how to approach that. Is it?
Well, they're full fields, and I must say, to do Hong Kong, I reckon it takes me about 9 hours, whereas the city meeting is much less than that, so it is more difficult.
All right, so you're describing more of a carnival day.
Yes, well, every race is full fields in Hong Kong. They are the best jockeys in the world, and the horse flesh is the most expensive horse flesh in the world. The average cost of a horse's yearlings, when they're bought to go to Hong Kong, is much higher than anywhere else. There's nowhere else that compares with them.
Right,
Japan,
so you would say that is the elite racing jurisdiction?
Well, it is. I read an article written by a very nice man, very sensible man, and he came to Australia and he was very impressed with Australian racing, and he wrote, in his opinion, Australian racing is probably the third best in the world, which is very nice of him to say, and a great compliment. And I saw him, we had a meal with him, and I said, look, thank you very much for being so complimentary of Australian racing. Very good of you, but look, you said it was the third best in the world, which I think it is. But I said, you've got the first and second in the world wrong. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, obviously Hong Kong's the best, and Japan's second, Australia's third. He said, oh, that can't be right.
Who was his topic?
Well, England and then America.
Yes, the old-fashioned idea.
Yeah, well, on any level you can sort of explain. Hong Kong buys the best horses in Australia, the best horses in England.
Well, they've got a perfect setup, haven't they? It's a Super League setup, and if you were going to design a dream.
Well, it and Japan have a positive expectation for the owners. If it goes into a ballot in Hong Kong, and it used to be only 1 in 11 applications actually got a permit, and if you had a permit, you had a positive expectations being an owner. I don't think that applies here.
Yes, we're owners. I think our horse is going to be ridden from behind next start, Glenn. Does that Mornay trialled on Wednesday at Wyong, and
How exciting. Rob will be top odds. He'll be top odds plus the roll.
all right, one more question for Rob.
Go,
Any
Gordon.
good.
Advice for Mark and Glenn with their steward's inquiry?
Unfortunately, we all hate being involved in stewards' inquiry, and your best defence, as always, is the truth. That it's humour, and there's nothing wrong with cracking jokes, and
Yes.
no one takes it seriously. That's
We
your
said,
best
look
defence.
at how well this man is riding, didn't we?
What's your last question, Mark? Because I've got to go.
What do you mean?
I've got to split.
You
I've got
must-
to
you
be
must-
somewhere.
You must have picked up a good sort. That's all I can say.
Yes, I'd say that's why he's usually running off from here. We're about to move into a position, and I previewed this on an earlier part. June's the wettest month in Sydney, and July is one of the driest months. So we're about to, turn the tracks over, go from wet to dry. How do you handle that? What are you looking for in the wet to dry period?
Well, I'm not sure it'll go to being dry very quickly. That's
Not at Randwick because it's a cesspit, but
not being rude about the Randwick, but if they got the gardener to take charge, but he does a great job with the garden. It's as firm, if you dig your heel into the garden at Randwick, it's as firm as anything.
I know.
It's not
Even if
impossible.
you go past on the tram, you go past Moore Park, the cricket ground there. They play cricket in
Oh,
in
yes,
winter
further
now.
there.
And it's just raised up, and it looks
Yes.
as dry as dry.
Dry
But
as
anyway, let's just presume that in a few weeks' time there will be drier surfaces. What are you going to do with all the form?
You have to go straight back to the dry form, going from wet to dry, and that's quite a easy thing to do.
It's
Probably-
easier wet to dry than dry to wet.
I
isn't
think
it?
going from dry to wet is very problematical, and one of the problems is that all the punters and other bookmakers all pull their horns in and won't bet because they're frightened of it.
Yes.
So to get them to have a bet, you actually got to give much better odds, and it's problematical anyway. It's really hard dry to wet.
I know, and because it's so cyclical, isn't it? You sort of lose sight of it.
As a young bookmaker, you had a set of bookmakers that used to be good bookmakers and lay horse they didn't like and whatever else, and they all did very well on dry tracks. And then when the tracks changed, the dumb cluck bookmakers who just used to stand every favourite did very well. It was their turn.
Well, speaking of cyclical, it's good to have turns, isn't it? And thanks for having a turn on our show.
Very good. Thank you very much.
All right, so people want to get involved. What was the name of the thing again?
RobWaterhouse.com. Not hard to remember.
Not hard to remember.
And 5 bet boosts every day.
5 bet
And we
boosts
take
every day.
For the
And you're
rating,
looking for customers.
looking for customers and want to take care of people.
Well, I'm one of your main on-track customers.
Yes.
And I enjoy that, don't
I do describe myself as being Glenn Pollitt trained.
Yes, I know all that, yeah.
So, and will Glenn get...
I describe myself as Rob Waterhouse poor. Fucking hell. I'm going. That's the end of the show.
What do
Thanks
you
so
mean?
much for coming on the
We
show,
won't
Rob.
stay here talking.
No, you guys, you three can. I'm going. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
See you guys.